Welcome to another episode of Costume Co. In this Halloween-themed episode and my first Tween edition, I analyzed the costumes of the worst witch. Today, to help me with this video, is my son, Graydon. We both watched this show together on Netflix. Graydon has his own YouTube channel called Heidiloney Plush Videos. Graydon, what do you do on your channel?
I make plush videos.
That's really cool. Okay, so we're going to talk about the worst witch today. Warning, there will be spoilers for the entire first season of The Worst Witch. The Worst Witch is a 2017 British fantasy children's television series about a group of young witches at a school for magic, starring actor Bella Ramsey. Many of my adult viewers will know her as Little Bear Lyanna Mormont in HBO's Game of Thrones. A fun fact is that Diana Rigg, who played Olenna Tyrell in Game of Thrones, also portrayed Miss Hardbroom in the 1986 film version. The Worst Witch is based upon a series of children's books written and illustrated by Jill Murphy. Have we read these books yet?
Nope.
Would you be interested in reading them?
I think so.
Yeah, they look pretty good. This current production is the 5th adaptation of the Worst Witch series and is a co-production between CBBC, ZDF, and Netflix. So Scott Langridge is the series costume designer and a 25-year veteran in film and television. That's his picture there.
Okay.
Starting his career at the BBC as a freelancer, Scott has an impressive body of work including Swashbuckle, CBeebies Christmas Pantos, and the 4 O'Clock Club. The Worst Witch is his biggest project to date. Scott was kind enough to share with me some of his behind-the-scenes details about creating the costumes for The Worst Witch. So what did you think of the costumes?
I think I like them.
Yeah, they're pretty nice, aren't they? Knowing that The Worst Witch is such a well-loved story with such a huge fan base, Scott tells me that creating the costumes was a good challenge, saying, "I had watched the show in the UK as a child, and it had many incarnations, some better than others, but I wanted to forget all of them and go back to the original source, the books. And in them, there are wonderful illustrations from the writer and creator Jill Murphy. Jill was on board, and so I wanted to bring her illustrations to life, but also put my flavor to them. There were many incarnations and ideas, but I felt we came to the best end result." Some of you will be a bit too young to note, but to me, the show has a bit of a vintage 1960s vibe to it. It appears to channel fantasy shows from the past like I Dream a Genie and Bewitched. Graydon, do you know these shows?
Nope.
No, you weren't even born yet when these came out, were you?
Oh my goodness.
My goodness. Okay, of the fashion designers that inspire him, Scott said, "For this project, I looked at Vivienne Westwood and Alexander McQueen, but I always draw on history and bring these elements into my designs." For shooting The Worst Witch, Scott has an on-set team of 5, including himself. So he's pictured there. You see that?
See it.
You see it, yeah. For the costume building side, Scott's team included 2 makers, a shirt maker, dressmaker, and milliner. Do you know what a milliner is?
Nope.
It's someone who makes hats. Plus a trainee who was a fantastic on-site maker. Scott also made many of the costumes himself when in later episodes he had more time. He would also call on other makers when he needed additional help. I love knowing where costume designers shop for fabric. Scott tells me that he shopped fabric at Joel & Sons in London. And I've mentioned them before in previous videos. Their designer fabrics are gorgeous, but also very pricey. He also shopped at Shepherd's Bush Market, which is a street market in London, and Leon's fabric store in Manchester, where The Worst Witch was shot. Do you know where Manchester is, sweetie?
Nope.
It's in England. You know where England is, though, don't you?
No.
You don't know? Okay. I'll have to show you on a map. Okay. I'll leave a link to Joel & Sons and Leon's in the description below so you can check them out. Okay, so one thread that's carried over from the books and throughout all of the TV and movie adaptations are the Cackles Academy uniforms seen here. So their tunics are solid black with gray shirts and gray and black striped neckties. The black is offset with punches of color in the sashes, stockings, and the cape lining. And speaking about the use of textured fabrics in the costume, Scott says, From the different textures in the girls' dresses to the bit of glitter thread in their capes, to lace, sheen, etc., it all adds up so nothing is flat and boring. And you might notice that the cape lining is printed with a black web design. Do you see that, Graydon? On the capes? It looks like a spider web, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. Here's one of Scott's sketches of the girls' school uniform. Does that look familiar to you? Does that look like one of the costumes from the show? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Scott drew that. This uniform has long sleeves with a back collar and cuffs. The final costume did away with the cuffs and instead they had piping. In the books and the 2017 TV series, the sash indicates the houses. So Mildred wears a red sash, Maud, Enid, and Drusilla wear yellow, Ethel and Esmeralda wear purple, and green sashes are sometimes also shown. And notice that their metal badges and stockings also correspond with their sash color. Beside the academy uniforms, each of the girls arrives at the academy in their contemporary civilian clothing, and Scott had to create an immediate impression by way of the fabrics, color, and silhouette of the costumes. He says, "I didn't want to buy anything ready-made from the shop, so it was always my aim to have everything made from scratch, and if you're doing that, then you can go for it." You can see that Ethel Hallow wears a Chanel-inspired suit trimmed in purple, as it appears to be her signature color, as Scott tells me that the girls' outfits and that of their families are color blocked. And Ethel's wardrobe is a facade for her being so insecure, while Mildred is mostly comfortable in her own skin and often will adapt to her new surroundings. Okay, so this is Mildred Hubble. Which character is she?
He's a kid girl.
Yeah, but is she one of the witches?
Mm-hmm.
And is she a good witch or a bad witch?
A good witch.
She's a good witch, but why is she called the worst witch?
Because she's the worst. Not bad.
She's not bad. She just makes lots of mistakes, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so she is the novice witch at the academy. So she always looks a little bit disheveled, isn't she? Like her hair's a little bit messy. Her socks are a little bit slouchy. She's always in direct opposition to her nemesis Ethel, who tries her best to keep up appearances and follow in the footsteps of her established family pedigree. Another way that Mildred is slightly different than the other girls is that she wears red and black striped witchy poo stockings instead of solid stockings like the other girls. You can see that Scott has incorporated little details into the design that might become noticeable after several viewings, like the bat-like collar on the shirt and the black and white striped piping on the sleeves. And if you look closely, you'll notice that the tunic fabric has a subtle texture. Here's a great close-up of Mildred's uniform. You can really see the textures of the black fabric. And look at her scarf. What's going on with her scarf?
It's messed up.
It's all messed up, isn't it? It's kind of unraveling a little bit, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Who's Maud?
She's like another kid girl that's a good guy, and she wears glasses.
She wears glasses, yeah. So she's Mildred's best friend, right? Yeah, and so she wears glasses, and she has pigtails, and she always wears a cardigan sweater, right? And her glasses, while round, are a slightly contemporary tortoiseshell style. And what about Enid? Who is she?
She was the new student in the third episode, I think.
In the third episode, yeah. She comes from like a celebrity family, doesn't she? Yeah, so she's always very stylish and polished. She's the most stylish and polished of the three girls.
I think so.
Yeah. Being the head student of her year, Esmeralda Hallow has a special yellow embroidery on her purple sash. And she's Ethel's sister. Is she a nice witch?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a nice witch, too. And here's a look at Mildred and Enid in their pajamas. The pajamas are made of gray flannel and are trimmed with a star motif and cuffs. Mildred often wears fingerless gloves and her scarf, I suppose, to indicate the academy is cold and drafty. Does that look like a place that you would want to sleep at or live at? No, is it too cold and drafty for you?
I don't know what drafty means.
Oh, okay, it just means kind of like the wind blows through the cracks.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to live there.
You'd rather live at home with Mom? Okay. Like in the books, the kindly Miss Ada Cackle, headmistress at Cackle's Academy, is sensibly dressed in comfortable dresses and bright knit sweaters, and she wears wire-rimmed glasses. She often adorns her clothing with brooches, and her more relaxed look is in contrast to her evil twin sister, Agatha. Is Agatha a good witch or a bad witch? Do you remember?
A bad witch.
She's definitely a bad witch. You can see that she likes pretty things, decorating her hat with silk flowers. Scott tells me that everything was designed and created for the show. I didn't want it to look like we'd been shopping at Marks & Spencer, from Miss Cackle's jumpers to the school shirts. Everything has been handcrafted by myself and my team. So Agatha Cackle is the twin sister of Miss Ada Cackle, and who is she?
She's the good witch.
You mean Miss Cackle is?
Yeah.
But what about Agatha Cackle?
She's a bad witch.
She's a bad witch. Okay, so to show the difference in her character, she's certainly more vain. Her styling is very on trend in her pinstripe of sorts asymmetrical suit. And as well, she has a sleeker hairstyle and she wears no glasses. That's sort of how we tell them apart, right?
Mm-hmm.
And while Scott couldn't name a favorite costume for me, he said, "I love transforming Agatha and Miss Gullet as they got more evil." While Ada prefers silk flowers and knits, Agatha goes more for the glam, like this taffeta cape trimmed in black spider-like lace overlay with a matching hat band. So, what do you think of Miss Hardbroom?
She's a good witch.
She's a good, but you were kind of scared of her at the beginning, weren't you? You said she's a bit cringy?
She's a bit weird at the beginning.
She's a bit weird at the beginning, okay, but her costume is actually one of my favorites in the show. So in the book, she's sort of tall and lanky with a severe bun and a long black dress, and yet her costume has this wonderful texture and luster. So Scott explains, the problem with black on camera is it can be very flat and so boring. What you need to do is to catch light in different ways, so all the fabrics were chosen with this in mind. If you look closely, you'll see that Miss Harbroom's costume is made from this gorgeous black and teal blue floral brocade, and that it's offset with a satin collar and cuffs detailing. And my favorite aspect is this ultra-wide waspy-style belt that nips in her slim waist. And here's Scott's design pictured on the left and the final result on the right that includes her hat and cape. Doesn't it look similar? Did the final results look like the sketch? They do. He did a good job, right? And Scott has also swatched his rendering with the fabric, as you can see here. Here's a close-up of the fabric detail, and another thing that I like are these satin insets, seen here. Now, of course, it's all up to actor Raquel Cassidy to work the action of her costume for it all to come together. Miss Bat is the eccentric, chanting teacher who is the oldest mistress at Cackle's Academy and has been on staff for many years. And how old do you think she might be?
About in her 70s.
70s, that's a good guess, yeah. So we don't know her exact age, but Scott tells me that her costume was purposely made dusty because she's so old. Wow. Do you think she's as old as Grandma?
Maybe.
Maybe, yeah. And here she's wearing gold-rimmed half-moon glasses, and she always keeps a baton behind her ear. Here's a sketch of Miss Bat's costume and swatched with emerald green with what looks like a chantilly lace overlay. Scott points out to me that Miss Bat has a spiderweb-shaped overlay on her skirt. That's kind of cool, hey?
Mm-hmm.
Professor Webb becomes the spell's science teacher after replacing Miss Gullet after she's turned him into a toad. Was that very nice of her to do that?
No.
That wasn't nice at all. He looks very different in the books except for his long hair and beard. And Scott tells me that he used the brown from the toad and then heightened it. The texture of his robes really catch the light. As the gym mistress, Miss Drill's costume is a little more sporty in terms of witch attire. Her costume is lightweight and floaty. In Scott's sketch, you can see that he designed a sensible costume for her with roomy sleeves, a split skirt, and sensible, flexible leather shoes. Now here's Miss Gullet. Is she a nice witch or a bad witch? She's not nice, is she? Okay, so she's actually, I call her a very naughty witch. Yeah, she was the teacher of spells until she got fired. Do you remember why she got fired? Because she turned the wizard into a toad?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But we didn't get to actually see that.
We didn't get to see it. It happened off screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So her robe is very simple black with a sort of rickrack style trim on her collar and cuffs. But as she becomes more sinister, while in cahoots with Ada, which is the other mean witch, right?
Yeah, she's the bad witch.
She's the bad witch. She has a costume transformation. And here is Scott's costume design for her. Unfortunately, I don't have a final costume to show you, but as you can see, Scott has included some of his fashion inspirations for the costume on the left of his sketch, along with the fabric swatches. Okay, so here's the Great Wizard. What do you think of his costume?
It's blue.
Okay, but
It's very blue.
besides it being blue, do you like it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's pretty nice, eh? So for the wizard costume, Scott used a variety of slub silks like dupioni and taffetas in this rich royal blue robe and cape in combination with a shimmery silver like the lining of the cape. Miss Tapioca is the head cook at Cackle's Academy. I don't have a full shot of her, but you can see Scott's design for her on the right. So she wears an asymmetrical bib apron and sleeve protectors attached to her black dress with buttons, and of course a black witch's hat. All right, so this is Miss Pentangle. Great, and what do you think of her costume?
It's very, very pink.
Yeah, and is it kind of girly?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, would you like to wear a costume like that?
I don't think so. That would be way too much pink.
Way too much pink, okay. So as the headmistress at Miss Pentangle's Academy for Witches, Miss Pentangle is the most glamorous of all the witches in her hot pink gown with a matching cape and hat. And although not known that well on this side of the pond, Miss Pentangle is portrayed by Amanda Holden, best known as a judge on Britain's Got Talent. So Scott designed the costume so that the coordinating cape lined in matching sequin fabric is removable, but still looks very much part of her outfit. And her costume, more than the others, has a very 1960s Jackie O type feel to it. And what did you want to say, Graydon, about it?
I really like it.
You like it. It's a very nice costume. So in the time travel scene, Graydon, do you remember the time travel scene?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Scott had to establish the difference between Mildred, who comes from the present, and a young Ada, Agatha, and Mona Spellbody. So that's when they're little girls. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also Maud's grandmother. Scott said, "For this, I try to think of the opposite of what we had already. The school badge I had crafted into a metal badge, so I went for an embroidered badge. The dresses were more simple and flatter fabric style, and the shirts plain and simple, but the girls from the past still need to look at Mildred and not know she was from the future, so it had to be subtle." So that completes the costumes of The Worst Witch. Season 2 of The Worst Witch is in post-production, so we'll hopefully see that in the near future. Are you looking forward to seeing part 2, season 2? I want to thank costume designer Scott Langridge for answering my questions and sharing his designs with me. And also, Graydon, thank you so much for collaborating with me on this video.
Okay.
And if you want to check out Scott's website, or they can also check out your YouTube account, right?
Okay. Wait, account?
YouTube channel? Your channel? Yeah. I'll leave a link in the description below. And Halloween is just a few days away, so I just want to wish everyone a safe and happy Halloween. Graydon, what are you dressing up for Halloween?
I'm dressing up as Mushroomy, and you can check my YouTube channel to find out who that is.
Yeah, you're going to have a Halloween special, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, okay, we'll post that. I'll put a link for that in the description,
Okay.
okay? So thank you everyone so much for watching.